And just take a moment to release the weight of your body into the earth. Tap into the breath. And find that really nice, deep, full cycle of breath. Inhaling, filling the body. And exhaling and releasing and melting. And just take a few moments to settle into this cycle. And as you inhale, feel the body floating, expanding. And then as you exhale, feel yourself releasing and melting. And as you visualize this, go ahead and manifest it physically in the body. As you inhale, just feel like you're breathing in helium and expanding and floating. And exhaling and releasing and melting. And just staying in the X shape, just explore the full possibilities just in that one shape of expansion and opening. And release and melt and deflate. Really establish that cycle of breath, the continuous cycle, inhaling till you feel completely full, and then gradually exhaling, releasing until you come to a state of total emptiness and release, ready to expand again. And thinking of everything coming from the center and filling, going down the legs to the feet, up the arms to the fingers, up to the head, down into the tailbone, filling the whole body from the center, and then exhaling and releasing. Start to think of placing the initial breath in different parts of the torso. And then allow the body to follow the breath and see where it takes you. And then melt back into the X shape again from there. So just placing little subtle different shifts of placement of where the breath is initiated in the body. go ahead and wherever the breath takes you on the inhale, then go ahead and start to just gradually melt and deflate straight from there, rather than going back into the X, and see where the exhale takes you. Come to a point of total release before placing the breath into a different part of the torso and expanding from there, and then releasing from that point that the breath has taken you to. Really follow the natural cycle of the breath, inhaling, expanding, opening, floating, exhaling, releasing, melting, sinking. From here, go ahead and expand the focus of the initial breath into any part of the body that you want, so it can spread beyond the torso. You can think of breathing into a knee or a hand or an ear, any part of the body to initiate the motion, the expansion and opening into space. Also start introducing the idea of the breath, the air being like helium that is going to allow you to float upwards, and also that you don't necessarily need to sink all the way back down to the floor for that sense of release. Still keeping the cycle of the breath even in the body, inhaling, expanding, filling, and exhaling, releasing and melting, with the breath being initiated in any part of the body, and seeing how the rest follows, is drawn and expanded into the breath. The motion, the response in the body can be as big and full-bodied or as small and as subtle as you want to play with, but always using a complete cycle of breath in and out. Gradually working our way up so that we're reversing the concept of bringing up and melting downwards on the release to open and expand back up again. And then go ahead and take a moment to fully open, expand into the X shape up in a vertical position. Really fill the space with your shape, with your breath. Open, expand. And then start to play with the breath. Start to play with rhythms of breath. So you're abandoning your natural breath cycle and inviting playful breath and just seeing where that takes your body. No decision making about results, just playing with the breath and seeing where it takes you, see what journey it takes you on. Allow all possibilities of size, level, rhythm. All comes from the breath. Allow any vocal sounds that come from the breath. Allow the idea of the breath causing you to travel in space. Allow the idea of the breath causing you to fall, to jump, to spin. Allow the idea of the breath causing very small, subtle shifts or huge, expansive motions. take your time. Gradually start to bring it down, melting back to the floor. Allow the exhales to give more and more into gravity each time. Play with that as you go. Take your time. And eventually you're going to melt back down into your initial X shape on the floor. Once you arrive there, invite back that whole cycle of breath into your body, filling, floating, and emptying, melting, releasing. And release the whole body into the exhale. Take a moment to just totally relax the weight of your body, surrendering to the earth.
I don't know.
that whole escapade, what was happening?
You know, I think as of last week, just to stay with what's happening mentally and physically is constant, you know, focus, just keeping the focus and keeping myself available to stay. I think the connection of things that resonated the most with me today was when we worked with the rolling up vocals and to the consonant sounds, and then how that connected for me with the breath impulses, which was the very last exercise. That felt very supportive and threaded together those three things for me. I felt like when I was in the X, I was really struggling at the beginning to find the space in my torso where that breath would happen and where it was available, and that was just my personal work today. I enjoyed it when we started shifting the scale. So because I was struggling so much with finding it in my torso and all of that, I enjoyed when the scale shifted and the breath could come from, you know, my right pinky finger or my left earlobe, or a different variety of spaces and places where I could find room for the breath. That was liberating at that point. I needed that. And I liked that then I felt that my movements became more random and unexpected as well. So there was a freedom at that point, and I felt like more of my body parts could be influenced by the breath and how it was moving. So going back, like the sound, the vibration, and the various pitches, those kind of going back to the vocalization were really interesting. And then I was thinking about impulses versus sustained, because that was a real contrast for me. Exactly. And then rhythms versus fluidity, and both those things came up. And then even more like how I could surprise myself with movement versus what was consistent and predictable. And that my ability to let go and not dictate what was happening played a big role in that. And that's always curious to me how that works.
Challenge.
And I felt like, you know, in that early X, when we were just in that X, there wasn't a lot of motion going on, but even just that expansion and release was motion in and of itself, even though it wasn't what we would think of in dance vocabulary as what anything, it was still a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you noted about the restraint that you felt on possibilities.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it is actually an important discipline to start with the most minimal and see what you can find in there. Make yourself explore that as much as possible, and then once you get out from there, it's like, oh, there's even more.
Yeah.
Like it kind of, I think it really creates a sense of being able to find so much more in everything once you've got out of that.
I definitely sensed that, and it was difficult. You know, I think it's difficult to put limitations on yourself sometimes, and I agree with you that a lot of learning can happen there.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Jenny.
One of the J's.
Do you want to switch? Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Okay, cool.
Let's see, mine I think will just be a little more random since that's how my brain,
That's great. Look
that's
at
how
me here.
my brain was working today.
It's a diagram.
Diagram.
You want to show the diagram to the
My
camera?
map.
Yeah, oh, good.
I'm a big
It's
journey
cool.
person,
Feeling
but
random
today this is just how it came out, so I'll probably just talk about it that way too. Let's see. Always the same thing that Sarah was touching on too for me is the just giving in to the process. So time and the wonderful deliciousness of being able to spend time on things, but then the body wanting to know what time it is, so just trying to not know, not worry because it's fine, and to not be aware of it. But then like the curiosity comes in, so yeah, just the thought of time. Didn't really have too much struggle today, actually, because last week I was so hyper aware because I had
You
to
had
be
something,
there.
yeah.
I mean, I still do today too, but not
wasn't
like,
not as
yeah, it's
involved.
different. So I noticed the difference between last week and this week, my thoughts on time. I'm very task oriented, so trying to just roll with the tasks, which I love having a task, but also just letting it be its own thing, rather than like, oh goody, I have a task. But just yeah, exactly. Just kind of going into it and not being so excited about the task.
Why not? What's wrong with that?
Yeah, well, that's true, but I think
it's
it's
play.
maybe less of a judgment, more of just a notice that when I have a task, I get really excited rather than.
What's wrong? I don't know why you're criticized. They seem to be criticizing yourself about it, but it's the moment of exploration. Why
Yes.
hold back?
So yeah, maybe just a noticing, not a judgment. And then some of the random things are just the tailbone equaling grounding whenever we were doing anything, or I was doing anything, breathing from the tailbone, and the crown of the head was opening and lightness, and then maybe trying to play with switching those around. Subtlety and not forcing things, and sometimes because I want to not fall into my shtick, I'll find that instead I'm doing the opposite and I won't do anything and just lay there. So
That's okay.
I was doing that a lot too.
So trying to find that balance of being so subtle that you just do nothing, which yeah, maybe that's okay.
I think that takes courage.
Versus finding the actual impulse and following that. If there is an impulse, it's okay to follow it, but sometimes I get like, no, I don't want to follow it because then I'm going to be doing what I always do. So finding that just little play in the brain body of the subtlety and the not forcing anything, but really following the actual impulse.
And then just shifting an impulse to somewhere where really it feels weird, like you've never really used that to start an impulse, and then something different has to come out of it if you're really following it.
Yeah,
it just has
truly
to.
are following it.
Yeah.
And then just had some other silly things written on here, but one thing that I really, when we were doing all the things with the breath going from the torso, was just thinking about the ribs as protector and what that meant, both physically and emotionally. Yeah.
Cage.
Yeah, the cage, so the physical awareness of this being a protector of all this delicate stuff, but how that's really an emotional thing.
Yeah.
So guarding the heart and so
that's such a
again,
really
something
interesting
I was
point.
Because
noticing.
of the freedom to breathe too.
Yeah, just the physicality of
Flexibility
it
in your ribs.
and the mental, emotional aspect of the ribs as protector. That's it.
That's it. Any of the scribblings?
Well, and there's, spirally things. Buzzing.
Oh yeah.
Sparkles, tingles. Yeah, lots of buzzing. And then one of my favorite sayings, I just wrote it on here, I had an improv teacher, Chris Aiken, that I really enjoyed. And he would always remind us to avoid the tyranny of doing something interesting. So that's kind of like, and I just love that because it's so dramatic. So that kind of goes back to the subtlety of like the tyranny of either side of it. So I wrote that down just because I say that a lot in my modern class and to remind myself mostly.
Thank you.
Ta-da. You want to pass
Probably be easier for. This is okay, but.
Yeah. It's up to you.
Thank you.
Pass it over.
Whee!
Okay, well, I'm the oddball out, as usual. I don't have a dance background, and I tend to be kind of intellectual, so.
Happy to have you and your intellect
please.
here.
Yeah, I don't know whether to lead off with my big insight or end with my big insight. I think I'll start with the other things and work up to my big insight. Bigger insight. Small things. I feel like there's not enough time devoted to the unspiraling, to the spiraling back in. Like there's a lot of time and like working your way out,
You mean
and then I'm like finally worked out.
And we're doing the warm-up?
Yeah, we're doing the warm, and then it's like I would like more time to work down my. Maybe I'm working more slowly. One of the interesting things, this goes to my big point, is I'm doing a lot of it with my eyes closed in order to concentrate. So I don't know what anyone else is doing. I don't know how fast they're going, how slow they're going. I'm just doing, okay, great, I can do my thing. But then I'm like, oh, I'm out of time. I better, get my head back quick. So I felt like, for me, it didn't seem like there was enough time to
with that one, I think because we used it as like a full exercise last week, and there's some familiarity with it. Then can use it as a warm-up and go through it just to warm up the body without really spending so much time. But I mean, we'll play with different warm-ups too. I just thought that would be
I really like
a good thing to use as a warm-up because we were already familiar with it as an exercise from last week. But yeah, I can see that I was kind of like getting through it quickly to have the time to move on.
And I like the instruction to use one leg at a time because I was trying to use
both
last time. And that's like requires all my Pilates, and I had some really good aches afterwards. So lying on my back, I have to remember to pull in my scapula. This is like the yoga thing. So for me, I prefer more corpse position. So that when I raise my arms, even if I'm lying down, it creates all kinds of other tensions in my muscles and stretching, and it probably has to do with my own, what is tight in my body. But I found that difficult, so I just had to
adapting it.
I just adapted.
And you were still open. The main thing was to really feel open.
I could really, so that's what I was drawing on there, so I had to modify it. The breath. And I was a little confused with the instruction, but maybe I wasn't confused. That when we were first asked to breathe in until a breath out was necessary, I was practicing the kind of a yogic breathing where you're breathing in and you hold there in a relaxed state until you need to breathe out.
Yeah.
And then you start the breath out. It also keeps you from hyperventilating that way. And then you breathe out all the way, and then you just wait there until you need to breathe in. So that's what I was doing there. And then later on you corrected it because you said, you might have looked at me, I have no idea. So you said, well, just do it smoothly so that at the end of your breath in, you start doing your breath out. And so then I was like, oh, okay, I'll do that. The sound, I really enjoyed the sound exercise. And I thought about why I liked it. And a lot of the reason I liked it was because one of the few times in the exercises when we could observe and coordinate with each other, I could see your faces. Because I was spending so much time like in my own little world, it's very isolating. So the time when we were working together, I was like, look at these wonderful people. So, then it was like really cool. And I was really enjoying that. Because I felt like I could coordinate and react and feel like who was doing what and come out of my little shell. So I really enjoyed the power of the group chanting. I felt like these things could be really powerful, especially if you were doing a type of performance. You could really reach down and do something really that would make people go like, oh, what's going on? So I think that was the thing that was my big thing. That's just so many of the exercises are so private. Or that they seem to be for the benefit of the instructor, who is the only person who is aware of what everyone's doing. She's the observer. So the rest of us are like doing our thing. I don't know how much other people are. I thought, so every once in a while I was wondering, how much are people looking at each other? So I was wondering how much that was going on. So anyway, this is my little journey. So when we shared the movement and vocal expression, it seemed more shared. I felt like
it did.
We're connected now.
Yeah,
because
into the space, into each other.
Yeah, and because I struggle with feelings of isolation and stuff like that. So, but then I also felt like it's so great to see what people are doing, and I wished I could see because you're all such great dancers. I'm like, but when I stopped, and watched, it was like, ooh. I stopped focusing on what I'm doing because I'm just interested in So everyone's creativity, how to be and see at the same time. I don't know the answer to that. So, okay.
Yeah, a lot of this at this point is, very much private exploration of concepts, because it's like everyone is going to have a totally unique response in their own body and emotion and mentally and everything. So it's really finding what that is for each individual person. And I mean, you were asking maybe last week about how it relates to performance art. And as a performance artist, then it really, I think, helps to find those ways of exploring yourself and your own body. And it is kind of isolating, like you said. And then there are other interactive exercises where you are responding and relating to other than self. So we will do some of those next week, and then you won't feel so isolated. But we've been very introverted so far. But thank you for those comments. Right? And I really don't want you to feel like you're ill-equipped because you don't have dance training, because I feel like the whole point is that this is something that is for anybody and everybody, everybody that has a body, because you're finding things about your own movement. So it's really, it just so happens that in this situation, that's,
Thank you, and I feel it's
mostly
true.
trained dancers, so don't even.
I didn't feel it as a lack, but I only, in doing the exercises, it was only, thinking about, these people have so much they know what they're doing. I've seen them. They're just amazing. I don't know about
Girl, that didn't mean we know what we're doing.
Tension building, holding.
Yeah, I just had a thing between my shoulder blades, so I just passed it on. It was fine until the end. I was like,
You prop it on your knee.
yeah.
It's kind of easy.
Okay, Julie.
Well, I'm always full of judgment, and most of my judgment relates to my body parts that don't work quite like they used to. I can't do this for long periods of time. I can do it if I'm moving through it, but I have to adjust my shoulder also. And my hip is funny, and my ankle. So I was constantly judging myself and my loss of range of motion. So I went through that whole thing, and that was just my own personal blah blah. The voice and breath work is, I don't know if you've read Cecily Berry. This might be very helpful for you because a lot of the things are in that book. Cecily Berry, the actor and the voice. I have the book, I can show it to you.
Oh, yeah, that's
A lot of stuff that you could use that I used from that in my course. And remind me, and I'll give you that book. It's got lots of consonant and vowel stuff, and the pa's and ba's and ta's and da's and fa and ba. And there's this whole thing where they do pa 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 ba 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 ba, and you do it, and ta 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 da 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 ta 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 da da da, and fa 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 la 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 fa 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 la la la. That's the hardest thing because you got to change.
I've been doing some of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Too,
so this book will give you
cool,
very specific things, and also the placement of the tongue against the soft and hard palate, and the placement of the tongue for all the different. It tells you where it needs to be. It's a great book. So you need to see this book. And all the vowels and pitches, all that stuff is just great. And I have this great sense of sort of a life in the inhaling. It's like a life. A whole life could be lived in this one breath, and then it dies in the dying. And actually that was a Buto exercise at one point with Shinichi. That's kind of an image I thought of.
In a breath cycle.
Yeah, in a breath cycle. And also the idea of becoming a character. Another character could come to life within that inhale and then die in an exhale.
Nice. So a lot of imagery.
Yeah, and just natural nature and elemental. The sense of expanding and shrinking. I can only expand so far, I feel like, but I can keep shrinking. I feel like I can just keep shrinking, just like turn into a skin bag, and that's and get closer and closer to the floor. So there was this wonderful image of trying. And there was only so far that I could reach out, and then but I could keep going. There was a sense that I could only expand so far, but I could keep collapsing somehow. I don't know, it was an interesting. And then the idea of an octopus shooting out dye, kind of, and then it shoots the dye out and travels through the water. Cool. I don't know, and the vibrations and earth actions, those are all, within sound, and then birds and vibrations from the earth and just everywhere around were really kind of nice. And that's all.
Oh, thank you.
That's enough.
Yeah, that's a lot of really interesting imagery that kind of gets all caught up in.
Yeah, within a breath.
Just
a breath. I mean, it can
But
expand into the whole world.
It is the life force, like the breath is the life force anyway. So it does contain everything. Kind of has to. But yeah. And actually it's interesting because I was just thinking, as you were commenting, everybody was also commenting about the vibrations and the, including everything that we had done. And in a way, it's like the breath, it still exists in that state of vibration. Like you're kind of smoothing through it in a way, but it's like it's still buzzing with that, everything is still buzzing with that vibration, but it's like the breath kind of, I don't know, vibrations cause the substance for you to be able to be breathing and suspended in a way.
It's almost like the vibrations they're really, I don't know, the sense of them being close together, the waves of the vibration has wave-like, and they almost get farther apart as the expansion happens, and then they come closer together again when they get back tight.
Right.
If that makes sense.
So I mean, it's nothing is disassociated from another thing. Everything is, everything that we're doing, has a connection with everything else in some way. So even if you're just really following just one pure concept, it has its place within everything else as well. So anyway, I guess we need to stop.
You did a lot of work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody so much.
Thank you.
Jenny's getting carried away.
Cinematographer.
Next week I have to leave at noon for my child pickup.
Okay.
We can start at 10, or if you wanted to start
I love the
earlier.
camera.